The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I am in my 7th year working alongside Bob, originating our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I'm joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. New background this week?
Yes, sir. New background. The team is in Chicago right now, so we got a big game against Ohio tomorrow. But as always, we got to get the pod going here.
Yeah, recording a little bit later this week. It's nighttime right now. We've got the Bengals-Ravens game on in my office right now. We had that big 2-star best bet over 44. We released that earlier this week and got a lot of market respect on that release. It closed 46.5 at Circos, and now we just got to bring that guy home.
Yes, we do, but let's jump right into the show here. And our first segment is where we will be grading the script writers on how they did for episode 10 of this NFL season. So let's look at the most exciting game of the week. And the Browns picked up a massive victory against the Ravens when their win probability was down to just 3% in the fourth quarter. But the script could not let the Browns fans ride high for too long. Their franchise QB is going to be out for the season now.
Yeah, they announced Wednesday morning that Deshaun Watson he's picked up another. Apparently it's a completely separate shoulder injury and now done for the year. And they're going to start rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I think that's the right call. I mean, PJ Walker hasn't shown anything. He's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when he's been on the field this year. So you might as well give the rookie a shot, see what you have in him. I mean, he did have a good preseason, but in his one start this year, in the regular season, he averaged just 2.0 yards per pass play. Just awful. But to be fair to Thompson-Robinson, that start came without much warning as Deshaun Watson was a surprise scratch that Sunday. And this week, he'll face a different type of adversity as Cleveland's offensive line could be without its top 3 tackles. And that is a terrible sign against a Steelers defense that has TJ Watt, 3rd in sacks in the NFL, and they also are pretty good on the other edge with Alex Highsmith, who ranks 16th in pass rushing efficiency. So it could be 4th-string tackle James Hudson and 5th tackle Jaron Christensen if DeJuan Jones can't suit up again this week.
All right, well, it sounds like Cleveland's offensive line is going to look pretty rough this week, but let's shift it over to the next segment where we're going to take a look at some of the other impactful injuries around the NFL. And the Bears are getting Justin Fields back this week, and fans will be happy to see that the pageant experience is over for now.
Yeah, I mean, Fields was forced out in that Week 6 game with the dislocated thumb, and he'll be back in uniform this week in a clear upgrade over Tyson Bagent. So I had to do a little bit of injury digging this week because if you remember, I think it was 2 years ago when Russell Wilson came back too early from a finger injury. It went terribly. But it turns out that was a completely different type of injury, and Fields is been practicing all week. In fact, he almost started that Thursday night game against the Panthers. So I'm not expecting too many limitations from Field on Sunday. And, you know, Bagent came in and he was all right in the passing department. In fact, he averaged just 0.1 yards per pass play less than Fields did. But the big difference between the two quarterbacks and the reason that Fields is the clear starter is that he has a much better or much more efficient scrambling the ball. He averages almost double the amount of rushing yards per game, and he takes care of the ball a lot better too, with only a 2.4% PFF turnover-worthy play rate. That's top 10 in the NFL, while Bagent's was up at 6.6%, second worst in the league.
All right, and if getting beat 34-3 last week wasn't enough, it looks like the Jaguars have now lost a critical piece in that secondary.
Yeah, it looks like starting cornerback Tyson Campbell is going to be sidelined again, and backup Montaric Brown is terrible. In fact, Brown has allowed only 1 fewer yard than Campbell this season on 93 fewer coverage snaps, just to give you a sense of the difference between those two players. And that's going to be a problem having Brown on the field this week. As we know, Will Levis likes to look downfield, and DeAndre Hopkins has 23 targets with 20-plus air yards. That's second most in the NFL. So if you see Hopkins lined up across from Montaric Brown on any of these snaps on Sunday, I can expect that Levis will be looking deep.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers took full advantage of Campbell being out last week. I mean, their offense looked like they were back to their juggernaut ways after they also got a few players back. Is this what we should expect from them for the rest of the season?
Yeah, well, they had that 3-game skid. They
Mhm.
lost 3 in a row after Deebo Samuel only got 9 snaps in week 6, and Trent Williams trudged through that ankle sprain and was ultimately missed the next 2 games as well. But those guys came back after the bye. Like you mentioned, they had a huge outing last week, and Brock Purdy completed a league high 6 passes with at least 20 air yards in Jacksonville, but he's going to have to get the ball out a lot faster this week because Tampa Bay's defense has the 3rd highest blitz rate, and Purdy struggled against the blitz this year. In fact, when you look at his performance against the blitz compared to a standard pass rush, he ranks 30th in the NFL in that delta between those two. And Tampa Bay's defense has a couple of nice matchups. I mean, right guard Spencer Burford for the 49ers has surrendered the 10th most pressures in the league, and he's not going to really stand a chance against big Vita Vea up the middle. And then Purdy's pass catchers, I mean, old reliable George Kittle leads the NFL in EPA per target, but Tampa Bay's defense ranks 10th in success rate allowed to tight ends. And Tampa Bay's defense is also good against running backs, 6th in EPA per target allowed. So they should be able to contain Christian McCaffrey. So if Purdy's going to get it done, it's going to be to Ayuk and Deebo. But I mean, I don't know. He hasn't looked great against the blitz this season.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment. We've got public opinion talk with me. And after a weekend that had great matchups, we have some hot takes from the public, and everyone is in love with the new Raiders coaching staff after another win on Sunday Night Football. I mean, they somehow have had the same record as the Bills. Is Antonio Pierce the real deal here?
I think the Antonio Pierce show ends this week. The market agrees. I mean, the Dolphins are up to almost 2 touchdown favorites, and the run's got to end here. I mean, Antonio Pierce and the Raiders, they beat Tommy DeVito, they beat Zach Wilson, but I mean, I think that's been disguising what we've seen as that's been a kind of an ancient offensive approach. I mean, they're basically just feeding Josh Jacobs his 20 or his 55 touches in the last 2 games, and that's just not going to work this week as the Dolphins have the top run defense in the league according to our numbers, and they're conceding a league low 32% pass success rate to running backs. So the Josh Jacobs bell cow stuff that Antonio Pierce has been preaching, not going to work. And I mean, these 2 wins have been disguising the rookie Aiden O'Connell has not been good. He ranks 33rd out of 38 qualifying quarterbacks this season in EPA per play. And the Raiders looking a little bit banged up on the offensive line with Dylan Parham and Colton Miller. So that could be a problem against Miami's defense that has the 6th highest sack rate in the NFL.
Yeah, and you had Miami's defense in the stock up, stock down section the other week. I mean, you had them in the stock up, obviously, but I think that's because this secondary is just as nasty as that defensive line.
Yeah, well, we did talk about that in the stock up segment before the Germany game. And then they obviously had the bye last week. But I mean, the secondary continued playing really well. I mean, Patrick Mahomes averages 5.4 yards per pass, but Kansas City's offense scored only 2 touchdowns. Remember, they had that defensive touchdown. That's the reason they won that Germany game. But the Dolphins defense is certainly living up to expectations now with Jalen Ramsey on the field next to Pro Bowl cornerback Xavier Howard. I mean, Ramsey out there means they get to bench backup cornerback Eli Apple, who is being targeted every 4.3 cover snaps. It's 3rd worst in the league because opposing offensive coordinators knew they could pick on Apple. And Ramsey and Howard on the field together also bumps Kader Kohu inside, where he's much better as a nickelback than a boundary cornerback. In fact, he ranks 8th in yards per cover snap allowed in the slot. So I like all of the Dolphins cornerbacks now that everyone is healthy, and they'll have a battle this week against Raiders wide receivers Devontae Adams, 19th in yards per route run, Jacoby Myers, 11th in success rate. But I think both of those guys are going to get shut down by Ramsey and Howard. Maybe right up there with Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed as the top cornerback starting duo in the NFL.
Yeah, Miami is looking scary on defense, but let's shift it over to our next segment here. And we've got stock up, stock down. And whose stock are you buying right now?
Well, I've got a pair of running backs for this segment this week. And let's start with the positive. Stock up. Green Bay running back Aaron Jones. He's finally not on a pitch count. I mean, I feel like,
Let's go.
his fantasy owners will know it feels like he's been on a pitch count all season, but the last 2 games were his only 2 this season above 15 touches, and Jones has been good when he's got the ball. He ranks 4th in EPA per target among running backs, and he'll be a threat on the ground this week as well because the Chargers' rush defense ranks 29th according to our numbers. And Jones being out there is making a big difference to everyone else on this offense. I mean, Jordan Love averaging 6.9 yards per pass play the last 2 games with more Jones on the field. And Love has a favorable matchup this week against a Los Angeles defense with the 7th highest zone rate in the NFL because Love's yards per attempt versus zone are 35% more than his yards per attempt against man coverage. It's the 6th largest gap among quarterbacks.
All right, well, who's got their stock trending down for you this week?
The stock down running back is Tony Pollard. He just has not been able to fill that lead back role after the departure of Ezekiel Elliott. A bit of a surprise to me, but I mean, just digging into the numbers, it's just not working for Pollard this year. He only has a 9% missed tackle force rate in 2023 compared to a career average of 20%. And he just doesn't have the burst. He hasn't been able to get into space. He's only reached 15 miles per hour on 17% of his touches this year, and his career average is 26% of his touches. So it's just not, he just has not been as nearly as explosive, and the Cowboys have responded. They're letting Dak Prescott throw the ball a lot more often. Dallas had a 48% pass rate on first downs in the first 3 quarters in the first 5 weeks of the season. But that rate has jumped now to 64% the last 4 games when they've realized that Pollard just doesn't have the juice. And Prescott has rewarded the early down passing. He's averaging 8.3 yards per pass play since week 6. So the Tony Pollard bell cow back dream, particularly for those fantasy owners, might be over especially if he can't have a huge game against the Panthers defense this week that ranks dead last in EPA per rush allowed.
Yeah, that guy has been an absolute disappointment this year, but luckily all my Cowboys fans in my leagues, they snagged him right before I could get him. But let's shift it over to our next segment where we've got the DraftKings player of the slate. Who do you got lined up for us this week?
This week, I've got Kyler Murray at 6,100. We saw last week, he proved he clearly isn't limited post-ACL surgery. They had 4 designed rushing attempts for Kyler, and he also had 2 scrambles. And on one of those scrambles, he reached over 20 miles per hour, marking his fastest speed since 2021. So I think there's no limitations on Kyler. And I mean, Arizona's offense had a 50% success rate against Atlanta. That ranks 2nd among all Week 10 offenses. So this team could be pretty solid with Kyler Murray at the helm. And I mean, I think if they wanted to tank, they would have just sat him all season. But I don't think they want to tank. I think they want to put up some wins, get this franchise moving in the right direction. And they already have their franchise quarterback in Kyler. I mean, he's got a huge contract that he signed last year. So they're not really in the Caleb Williams or Drake May sweepstakes anyways. So I could see Arizona playing spoiler down the stretch this year. And Cardinals tight end Trey McBride has been the breakout player on that offense this year. He's been targeted on 31% of his routes, ranking 4th in the NFL. And he has a favorable matchup this week on Sunday as Houston's defense will likely be without both starting linebackers and starting safety Jimmy Ward. So we could see McBride have a huge game with Kyler Murray this week.
Yeah, I found it kind of coincidence. Kyler came back right as Call of Duty just released. We know he's had issues with that, so I was surprised to see him come out and play good. But
yeah, well, I mean, there you go. I mean, Arizona doesn't want Kyler getting sucked into the COD vortex. So they're like, you just got to come back and play football. And doesn't he have that video games limitations in his contract written anyways? So
yeah, I think he does. He's got some weird stuff going on in that, but. Let's shift it over to our next segment where we will be looking at the weather of the week. What are you seeing out there?
It's a pretty clean week. I mean, we got high winds in Cleveland, but that's not out of the ordinary for this time of season. The game to watch will be that huge Monday nighter, and it's going to be humid in Kansas City, and there's also possible rain showers. We saw a professional bet come in Monday morning, bringing the total down from 47.5 to 46.5 based on the weather. It was looking really bad earlier in the week. It's calmed down a bit as we record this on Thursday night. Another bet came in on Tuesday, bringing the market to 45.5, and at the time of this recording, it sits at 40. the over-under sits at 45 at circa. I think there might be still a little bit room for it to go even lower if there's going to be steady rain on Monday night. But if the rain clears out, it probably goes back up. And if you remember, for reference, the total in the Super Bowl was 51, and there was 73 points scored. But obviously, that was in perfect scoring conditions in Arizona.
All right, well, let's jump right into that highly anticipated Super Bowl rematch. I mean, this is going to be one of the games of the year, if not the game of the year. So let's start with the Chiefs. What do you think about this matchup for Patrick Mahomes?
Well, Mahomes thrives versus defenses that call man coverage because he can extend the play running around the pocket, getting out of the pocket until someone gets open, or he can scramble when all the defenders have his back to him. And we saw Mahomes virtually clinch the Super Bowl, adding 10 percentage points of win probability with a 26-yard scramble on the final drive last February against the Eagles. And the Eagles have the 9th highest man coverage rate this year, and they also have the 6th highest standard pass rush rate, and Mahomes has been better against man coverage than zone this year, and he's been better against the standard pass rush than the blitz.
Yeah, do you think the Chiefs' offensive line is going to be able to hold up against this Eagles D-line?
Well, kind of the surprise this season is that the best player on the Eagles defensive line has been rookie Jalen Carter. I mean, they have so many guys on that front, but the rookie has been the best of all of them. Carter ranks 2nd in pass rushing efficiency, but I think he's going to be pretty much shut down this week. It's probably his toughest matchup of his season. I mean, he's going to be going against Pro Bowl left guard Joe Thuney and center Creed Humphrey, who ranks 7th in pass blocking efficiency. So I'm not expecting much from the rookie. It could be a welcome to the NFL finally moment for the big guy up front.
Yeah, and are we expecting a big game from Kelsey after his nice little trip to Argentina?
Well, I mean, Kelsey, I think he will have a favorable matchup. The Eagles are surrendering a league high 0.5 EPA per target, 2 tight ends. That's great. I mean, I want to reemphasize that. Every time the opposing offenses are targeting tight ends, the Eagles are surrendering a half point. That is horrible. And Kelsey exploited them last Super Bowl. He averaged 13.5 yards per target with a touchdown last February. So we could see Kelsey have another big game, but I don't know. I kind of feel like the Eagles might have a sneaky game plan, some sort of specialty. They maybe put James Bradbury on Kelsey, something like that, because they just can't let him beat them again. And Kansas City's only other receiving threat has been the emergence of rookie wide receiver Rashee Rice, who's averaging 2.72 yards per route run in the slot. But I think he's going to be limited in this game as the Eagles defense will be getting crucial starting nickelback Bradley Roby back. And Roby's conceding just 0.2 yards per cover snap in the slot compared to the backup nickelbacks, Mario Goodrich and Eli Ricks, who were combining to allow 1.8 yards per cover snap in the slot. So Roby alone is worth a half point to Philadelphia's defense. And remember, they traded for safety Kevin Byard 2 games before the bye week as well.
Yeah, and the Eagles are getting back a pretty key piece in this offensive line with right guard and former Husker Cam Jurgens, right?
Yeah, that'll be big for their offense. So they get Roby back on defense. They get Jurgens back on offense. And I mean, Jurgens was allowing just a 3.9% pressure rate before he got hurt. And then Sua Opeta came in and allowed a 8.6% pressure rate. So more than double what Jurgens was allowing. And Jurgens is coming back at the perfect time to battle on the interior across from defensive tackle Chris Jones, who ranks 4th in pass rushing efficiency. And then next to Jones, we've seen Chiefs edge rusher George Karlaftis have a breakout sophomore season. He's 9th in pressures, but he'll be contained by all-pro right tackle Lane Johnson, who ranks 9th in pass blocking efficiency.
All right, well, how big is the loss of Dallas Goedert going to be for the Eagles offense?
I mean, Goddard, he is a key part and kind of an unsung hero for the Eagles offense. He's 7th in EPA per target among tight ends this year. And it isn't really obvious where else Jalen Hurts is going to look, because we know Kansas City's defense specializes in taking away wide receivers. And I think we'll see L'Jarius Sneed, who ranks 10th in yards per cover snap allowed, possibly shadow A.J. Brown this week. So I'm kind of just expecting the Eagles to lean on the ground game. They're 5th in EPA per rush, and the Chiefs are 25th in rush success rate allowed. It could be wet on Monday night, like we talked about in the weather segment, and that would further emphasize Philly's advantage in the running game.
All right, so what are you thinking overall here? Is it as simple as Andy Reid coming off a bye, Mahomes laying less than a field goal, or what?
Well, I mean, Andy Reid is 18-10 ATS with an extra week to prepare, but the Eagles are also a really sharp organization. They do a great job self-scouting in the bye week. Nick Sirianni is 2-0 against the spread coming off the bye. So I don't know that there's going to be, a huge Andy Reid extra prep edge here. It's a huge game for the Eagles. Obviously, it's a big game for both teams, but with the San Francisco's 3-game skid that we talked about earlier when they didn't have Trent Williams or Deebo Samuel, that means that Philly would have about a 70% chance to get home field advantage if they can come away with Arrowhead with a win. So I don't know. I mean, our model favors the Chiefs by 1.3 with a predicted total of 45.7. So I'm just going to kind of kick back, relax, and watch one of the most competitive games we'll have all season.
All right. Sounds like you are agreeing with the betting market on the side in total, but let's find some value here with another primetime prop.
Primetime prop going with DeAndre Swift over 16.5 receiving yards. So Swift has established himself as a part of Philadelphia's passing game with 34 targets, ranking 11th among running backs. And Swift has gone over this 16.5 mark in 4 of his 8 starts this season. And now Dallas Goedert is out, meaning they'll need Swift more for those quick passing game without Goddard on the field. The potential rain will also encourage Hurts to throw more underneath. Plus, the Chiefs run quarter coverage at the highest rate in the NFL, which kind of encourages checkdowns from opposing quarterbacks. So I expect Swift to get at least 5 targets on Monday night, and he should go over this yardage prop, as Kansas City's defense is also missing their top coverage linebacker, Nick Bolton.
Yeah, I am pumped to watch that game on Monday night. Make sure to tune in next week where we will be recapping that game and also preview Week 12 of the NFL. If you're looking for more Week 11 content, go to drbobsports.com for all the free analysis. And we've also got all of Bob's college football write-ups on the site as well. So please go ahead, leave a like if you would, and we will be back for another episode of the Dr. Bob Sports podcast on Black Friday.